Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel, The Vibepreneur. It is now 10 p.m. and we're going to start today's automation workshop where we will build N8N workflows. If you remember, just the day before yesterday, I had built a very basic N8N workflow which was using Google's Gemini Flash model, and the workflow was triggered using a chat message for which Gemini Flash was responding with an appropriate response, a friendly response to be precise, because within the system instructions, that's what we have mentioned, right? So today, my plan is to build upon that same workflow and enhance it further. And we'll just explore various various creative ways how we can extend that workflow, how we can enhance it even further. Okay, and before I start doing that, I have a request that if you have any questions, doubts, ideas, any thoughts, you want to chat about anything, you can use our YouTube chat. I'm connected with you live. You can always chat with me. Okay, so let me quickly share my screen and we'll get started. Now, one thing before that, I actually, as I promised in my YouTube post, I have actually tried today Google's VEO3, which is a video generation model, and which is the most advanced video generation model. So I just wanted to share the output that I got from it. I might not be able to share the sound from my machine. But you can just see the video, which I'm gonna play for you, and it also has a sound. So before I play the video, I'll just quickly share the prompt with you, the prompt that I used to generate this video. A cool and casual dude in his 30s, vibe coding and building apps using AI inside his home office while live streaming it, happy and excited. So that was a very, very basic prompt which I gave to this Google VEO3 model, and for which it has generated this video. So I'll quickly play this video as a treat for you all, and for me as well. It is my first VEO3 video generation, so it was like a test output, but I'm really excited to share it with you. So I'll just play this 8-second of video clip. And that's it. So this is an 8-second of video clip which looks so much surreal. So this is the advancement that we have got in the video generation capabilities. Particularly, we have tried this Google's VEO3 preview model, which is the most advanced model which Google has announced just almost a month back in their Google I/O 2025 seminar. So I hope you enjoyed this particular small sort of a treat which I kept for you. And now we'll get back to building today's automation workflow on N8N. So again, this is how the N8N UI looks like, right? When we log into our N8N interface, this is how it is. We have our workflows listed here. And if you remember the last workflow that I created on 24th of June, so that's what I'm going to launch now. And if you have watched that live stream earlier, so you'll recognize this workflow. And just for a simple test, I will also run this workflow and see if everything is working fine. So we'll just do that. We'll just send it a very, very basic chat message, and we are hoping that our Google's this Gemini Flash model, which is connected via Google Vertex API, is going to respond back to us. So I'm sending this chat message and we see these loaders kicking in. That means these these nodes have performed their operations and everything is green. That means everything, all the nodes ran successfully. And whatever was the output generated from this last node has become the final response from our entire workflow. So that's what we got here. Hi there, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. As an AI, I don't have feelings, but I'm ready and happy to help. How are you doing today? Right? So just a very, very simple, basic, small test. And with this, we can confirm that our workflow is working fine. So as we have left it like earlier. Okay. So my plan for today is to enhance this workflow even further. So the very first thing which I'm planning to do for this one is, so this, if you remember, this first node, right, this one, which has a orange color power symbol along with it, right, that is our trigger node. That means our workflow gets triggered from this node, right? So I'm gonna remove this trigger node and I'm going to replace this with another kind of so this is a chat trigger node, right? As you can see the chat symbol, and as you just saw the small test that I did, that this workflow gets triggered via chat. Now I'm going to replace this chat trigger with a different kind of a trigger. Okay, so let's see what are the options. So I'm to remove this or any node, right? When you hover over any node, you'll have few options. So one of the option is this delete, this dustbin, trash can icon. If I click on it, and that's it, the node got deleted. Okay, the node gets removed, and so we don't have, like, this is like an orphaned workflow. There is no trigger to it, so there is nothing that can trigger this workflow. So no matter what I try, this workflow can never be triggered. Okay, so now I need to trigger this, and let's see what are the options we have. So okay, so earlier, if you remember, when the very first time I landed on a new workflow, there was a plus symbol at the center of a workflow, which was telling that you can click here to get started with your first node. Now we don't have that because we already have few nodes there. So how can you add more nodes to your workflow, right? So there are a bunch of ways. If you want to add a node in the chain after the last node, you can use this plus sign, right? But if you want to just add a node in general, then you can click on this plus sign, which is always on top, right? So when you click on this, it's gonna open the nodes panel. Okay, and here also it is a bit smart. So when there is already no trigger node, right? When there is no trigger node within your workflow, it's going to list out all the trigger nodes for you, right? So if you remember my previous discussion where I mentioned about these trigger nodes, like you can trigger this workflow manually, you can trigger it based on any event from any app like Notion, Airtable. You can do it on a regular schedule basis, like every hour, every day, and things like that. You can trigger it via a webhook call. That means a network, a HTTP request can be sent to this particular workflow, and that will launch it, or a form submission, right? And the difference for form submission was just that it's also a webhook trigger, but it is a special kind of a webhook trigger where you also get a UI to sort of populate the form, right? And today that is what we're going to use as a trigger. Okay, so I'm going to click on this on form submission. Right now, again, the form trigger UI has dialog has loaded up, and I don't want to overwhelm you right now, so I'll just close it. And so there is some weird thing has happened. Let me close this down. So if we see, we have our nodes like in an island here, all connected together, but we have got our trigger node hanging like an orphan here below, right? Why this happened? Because when we added a node from here as a trigger, the N8N could not figure out where to exactly put this node. Okay, when you click plus sign here and add a node, then it knows that you want a node here. But when you added a plus sign and selected for a node, N8N could not figure out where it should be added, so it just places that node within your editor view, but you can always drag it around, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this node at the start of our workflow, okay? But you see it is still like disconnected, right? This node and this node does not have any connection yet, right? So we need to now build a connection so that this form node, this which is our trigger, will actually be able to send data, right? If you remember, because this is like a flowgram, right? Because the data flows from a node to a node. So right, so unless this node is not connected to this, there would be no data flow, right? So how do we do that? We just take this plus and we hold it and we just drag it. Sorry. We just take this plus sign and we just drag it and leave it on the node which we want to connect. Now if you see, these two nodes has got connected with each other, right? A very simple thing. I'll show you again. So in case you want to remove any connection from a node, right, you'll hover over the node and you'll again get this trash can symbol, which if you click, it will remove that connection. So let me do that now. Okay, I deleted the connection. Again, there's no connection between this node and this node, right? But if I want to again make a connection, I'll take it and I'll just drag it and drop it here. Okay, now we again have got a connection between this form trigger node and this edit field node. Okay, I hope so far so good, but if you still have any questions, actually I see there is a question here. Where are sessions before lecture 17? And that is asked by Sarthak Ahuja. Okay, so Sarthak, to respond you, and I completely understand there is some confusion there, which I have actually mentioned in my session 17 already, right? Previous session, that I was recording earlier to this all the sessions in Hindi, and they are available on my this another YouTube channel. I can actually drop links here. I'll drop the link here, but just to make sure, these are recorded in Hindi. Okay, so from here I have done like from so you can ignore the first session, right? It is like a zeroed session. Then this one is session 1, 2, and then I started naming things properly from session 3 on, right? So session 3 to session 16, or rather session 1, 2, and so on till session 16 are actually available under this channel. And I'm just gonna drop the link. So in case anybody is interested, but they are in Hindi. So if you don't understand Hindi, then you might face difficulty in understanding what I'm speaking there, right? But it was just an idea that I started with on this channel, and then I decided, okay, let me continue the same thing over sort of my main channel, which is this one that I'm publishing my videos on. All right. So with that out of the way, so we have got these two nodes connected now, right? And this is our form trigger node. And okay, now I'm going to open this form trigger node, right? Open means now I want to configure the parameters of this form trigger node. So I'm going to double click on this, right? After I double click on this, I get the same dialog, exact same dialog dialog window, which was open when I had clicked the plus sign to add this form trigger in the first place, right? So here, as soon as I open, I see there is some warning here, right? Red color, and it says parameter form title is required. Okay, so this is this form title input field, and it's like a requirement where if you're creating a form, right? If you're creating a form trigger, so that will actually give out a form as a UI, it need to have a title as a mandatory. Okay, so I'm gonna give it a form title for it, right? So I'll just call it talk to Gemini. Okay, so I gave my title for this form as talk to Gemini. Now I can fill the description, okay, which is not needed at this time. Also, I can add more elements to it, okay, which is actually important. But before I actually add the element, right, if I close this form and if I show you the UI, you can notice one thing, that earlier this form had some sort of a alert symbol here and was in red. That means the form was not ready and there was some configuration missing, but which is not anymore. What does that mean? That means this state of this form node is perfectly okay, right? So there is no error in this form and it is perfectly fine to have it this way. But there is a small bit of problem which I will show you when from inside the form node. Okay, so let's do one thing. As you remember in my earlier video, for any node, when I'm working on it or I want to debug that node, I can click on this orange button, execute step, which will sort of run that node, execute this node. Okay, so I'll click this execute node again, execute step again, and you see what just happened. Okay, a new browser window has got open, right? So you see this one, this is a new browser window, separate window, which has just got open, right? And it has some URL. We'll come back to this URL after a while. But and there's a warning, this is a test version of your form. So I'll explain why it is test version, why it is not production version, how to change it to production version, and so on. So I'll explain you all that, right? But this thing that you see, right, this white panel, this is our form. Okay, but you might be asking, does this form not look like a little weird, because any form is supposed to have inputs and this form does not have? And you're exactly right, right? The thing is, they at least have a button here, right? So even with a click of this button, right, without entering any input, you can trigger this workflow. Okay, and that is a perfectly fine scenario. Now you can imagine there might be various reasons why you might want to do this, like you have like a very sophisticated workflow, right? And you actually don't want any input for that workflow. It, for example, it's a web scraping workflow, right, where you have a particular website which is fake, for example Reddit, right? And I'm disclaimer, I don't support scraping Reddit, or for that matter any website, right, unless it does not allow you to do in a legal way, right? So let's make sure of that. But let's say you want to do that, right? Let's say you have your own blog website and you want to scrape your own blog website and so on, right? So what you can do is you can create a form trigger and just have a button, right? Because you don't need any input. You have predefined URL where your crawler will go, so you don't need any input in that case, and you can just click the button and that's it, right? That will be enough for to trigger the workflow, right? And which is a perfectly fine scenario, and that's what I'm going to show you. And one problem happened, that that form has actually timed out, so if I even click the button, nothing will happen. So I'll just close this and I'll execute step again. Okay, now see, if you see the UI here, it has changed a little bit. It says listening for a test form submission, right? That means whatever I perform action here, this is listening for it. Okay, so let me click the submit button now and we'll see. Okay, see, few things happened, right? Some things happened here as soon as I clicked that button. First thing is, we got a nice useful message. Your response has been recorded. Form submitted, your response has been recorded, which means that when we press the button, whatever the form was supposed to do, it did it properly, right? It sort of succeeded in doing it, so that's fine. All right, now we can actually close this window. It does not make any difference, and come back to our this form dialog again, right? Form configuration dialog again. What do we see here, right? Again, we see a JSON object, right? If you remember from my last video, where when we were triggering a chat, right? When we were sending a chat message and it was triggering our workflow from chat, the chat message also was sending out an object, right, with some values like session ID, something called chat input, and things like that, right? So when we excuse me, when we submit the form, then also it generates this kind of a output, right? If you see, this is our output that is coming out of this form node, right? And here it does not have any data, any information. Okay, basically it the only variable thing it has is this submitted at, right, where it is actually telling the time, and I think it is UTC time zone because it's not my time zone, or I think it's okay. So there is a way to set the time zone in your entire N8N setup, right? So it is following that time zone, right, whatever it may be. Okay, and another thing it says is form mode test, right? So this form is running in the test mode, not in the production mode, and we'll talk about test mode and production mode later, right? But for the time being, that's how you sort of understand it, that the form is sending an output with this some basic kind of information, right? Now where that information will go, right? And you also notice one more thing. Generally, when we trigger any workflow, all of its nodes gets green, right? But in this case, only the form submission node is green. Remaining all nodes are still gray. What does that mean? That simply means that when we clicked on that execute step button, right? What that button did is only ran this node, and that's it. Even though any output came from this node, it actually did not send any output to this node. Okay, or the execution only was sort of restricted within this node, and this is required especially when you are trying to test things, right? If you're trying to test things and you have like a very complicated workflow with like here you see hardly 2 nodes or overall 3 nodes including the trigger, but let's say your workflow has like 50 nodes or 100 nodes, and yes, there are workflows in many scenarios where you might need to create that many 50 or 100 nodes and you are trying to debug any particular node, and that node is like somewhere at a point where downstream there are a lot of other nodes, and also like this node depends on any data. So for all that matter, we are just trying to test the execution of only one node, right? That is why only this node is green. Okay, so now I'm opening this form trigger again, and let's see what all can we do inside it. All right. Okay, so as I said, description, we can put the description, and let me put it so that I can demo how it looks, where it will come, right? So I'll just give it a very basic description. Use this form to talk to Gemini AI LLM. Okay, please be nice, right? Okay, so we have added the description. Okay, below that we have something called form elements. Okay, and there is button, it says add form element, right? So let's click on this add form element and let's see what happens here. Now again, the UI changed and we got 3 fields here: a field name, the type of the element, and a placeholder, and also one boolean, a switch, right? Is it required field or not required field? So as you might guess, this way you can add inputs to your form, right? For example, I want to add an input called full name. Okay, type text, placeholder, enter your name here. Okay, it's a required field, right? Or let's say this is not required field. And again, I'll add another form element and I'll call it email. Okay, and this one I can select email, right? And by the way, when I said I can select means I can click on this element drop down and then I can see all the various options. Those are available as part of this form elements, right? So we can also place some custom HTML inside it. We can give a date picker, a drop down list to select from bunch of options, even a file upload, a hidden field, right? Those of you who are already been into programming for some time, like using hidden fields, we pass something like security tokens and like CSRF tokens and things like that, right? So that can be done. Cross-site request forgery, number, password, text area, like whatever. Okay, so for our use case, I'm gonna select that element type as email because I want user to enter the email, and then I will give it a placeholder. And if I can type, okay, and I cannot. Let me quickly fix my keyboard. I can type. So placeholder, enter your email here. Okay, and this one is required. So the name I had not kept it required, but email I have kept it required, and I'm gonna enter the field name. I will say your message, right? Type is text, placeholder. Please enter your message for Gemini here, and this is again a required field, right? So we actually added 3 fields plus a form description. Okay, and one field is full name, which is of type text, which is not required. Another field is email, which is of type email, it is required. And then we have a your message, and let's make it not the text, let's make it text area. So text area gives much more space to write whatever long kind of a message you want to write. Okay, right. So, and there are a few more options which we'll check later, but let's start with just these options. And again, I want to debug my form. I want to test how my form will work. So I'm going to click on this execute step. Okay, I'll click on the execute step. And it was supposed to launch. I'm not sure what happened. Let's click on stop listening, and let's click on execute step again. Okay, so that form UI is not loading up. Right, let's do one thing just to keep things in a consistent way. I have saved this workflow, and I'm gonna refresh it because it's after all a web UI, and any web UI, when it sort of does not behave as you expected, we can just always do a clean refresh, right? And if you have saved things, then you are sure that nothing is gonna go get lost. So I can see all my fields are still there, all that looks good. So I'll click on execute step again, and here we go, right? So this time, I don't know, for whatever reason, we were facing a bug or something, I don't know, we were not able to get the form, right? But now we got it. So this is our form after we added those elements looks like, right? Full name, text, email, and required, this asterisk, okay? And your message, right? And that is also required. Okay, if I click submit, it will not let me submit because it says these fields are required, right? So let's enter our information here. Okay, full name, what's M, email, mewitzel@gmail.com. Okay, and message. Hi Gemini, how are you? I know you might be busy as an AI model. And I'm trying to keep the message a bit long because we have got this text area, so I'm trying to use the real state which we have got here, right? As a model, you must be running quite busy. You might be busy. As an AI model, you must be. No, I don't want to repeat the same thing. You must not get free time. Can we have lunch today? Again, this is my very bad attempt of a role play, but let's see. So I'm gonna click on submit. Okay, and let's see what we get. So by the way, again, the same thing happened. The form got submitted successfully. That means whatever the form of whatever this UI, the form UI was supposed to do, it did its job, and it has shown us this helpful message: form submitted, your response has been recorded. Okay, and I can close this now. Now again, coming back to our this form dialog, right? Form node. What we got here. Now earlier, if you remember, we had only these two values, right? Submitted at and a form mode, right? But this time we got few more things, right? And these things, first of all, as you might see, the responses which I had entered into the form, the values which I had entered into the form, those exact same values are appearing here, right? And they are under the keys exactly as the field name, right? Whatever I had entered the field name, right, has become the key for that message, right? So we have got this nicely formatted JSON data coming out of this form node. Okay, so we can pass this form data excuse me, we can pass this JSON data to our next node, right? And you might see like how long of a message I typed, and imagine if I have to in order for me to test it every time, I need to type all of this long message. Or for example, before this form you have like a very complicated step which takes a lot of resources and things, right? And you don't want that same step to be doing again and again. So N8N has given us a very cool feature for it, and that is this feature here, pin data, right? What that does is, as soon as I click this pin data, okay, the output node, right, the data which is in output node of this particular form node, right, of only this node, has got frozen. Okay, now you have to be very careful with this. It's like double-edged sword. If you leave it pinned and you try to execute your workflow, even if you enter any value in your form, you will still receive the exact same values. Those are pinned, right? So whatever the new values you'll try to send to this node, it will get rejected, and whatever the pinned value will always be passed to the next node. So you have to be very careful with this pinned data, right? But it is very good for debugging and testing out your workflows. Okay, so so we have got this data and it is pinned to this form node, right? And will come out. And again, N8N UI is actually very helpful in giving us some information just by looking at the nodes. For example, here if you notice, there is, first of all, it has become purple and it has this pinned symbol to it. That means it is frozen, right? There is data, there is some data pinned to it. That means if I execute this and try to send any other values, which it will not be used. Okay, so far so good, right? Now Okay, so remaining these, you know how they all work, right? If I just double click this edit field node, you will see whatever configuration we did last time, right? That same configuration is there, which is basically a message. So this is the output that we are trying to get from this edit field node, right? So this is the input, and here is the output which will come out of this edit field node. Okay, and here we are already seeing one problem which we need to fix before this node can function, right? And the problem is this thing which we see, first of all, the result is undefined and it is in red, right? It is in red and result is undefined means in this case I know that it's simply telling it is not able to find this particular value from the input. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we'll just simply delete this. Okay, and we'll see our input. Okay, this is the input, and what values do we need here, right? So if you remember earlier, we were passing the input message from chat input, right, which was a message that user was entering. And where is that message? Here is under this key. So I'm just gonna take it and drag and drop here. Okay, and as soon as I did it, you see the result. It shows, first of all, it has all turned into green. Earlier it was red, right, and it is green now, and it is showing the same message that I have typed here, right, as a result. So that simply means it is able to get some values, right, for this particular field. Okay, now there are few more values that I've added, right, few more elements that I've added into the form to capture from the user. Okay, and I want to use those values as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add more fields, right? So I'm going to add a full name, capture this value. Yeah, result is correct, which is fine. Then I'm going to add email. Okay, and in this case it can be string, right? In the case of form, there was a validation needed, right, that when somebody is entering the email, they should actually enter the proper email and not some random things, right? But this step we know has already coming after that check. So here the email can be used as a string, right? I don't need to check if the value is an email or not, and anyways that is not even available here because these are JavaScript native data types, right? So whatever JavaScript allows the values, only those types of values are available here, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna now capture the email here. Again we see the result appearing, right? So in this from this edit field node, we are creating another new object, right? And that new object is gonna have these keys, right, or key value pair, right? So what I'm gonna do is, again, just I want to test this node now. Okay, so I can just click this execute step and let's see what we got, right? So now you actually see this edit field node in its full glory, right? Now you actually understand that this field receives certain input, right, certain data, and then you can map those values, right? You can map them, you can modify them, you can combine them, you can do a lot here, right? After you perform these operations, and then you can output a resulting object, right, which we are using, right, which we are getting in this case like this. Okay, so here few things have got changed. The title has become like this, and the keys have all gone into a small case, and which is a very standard practice in passing data as a JSON. So that is all fine, right? Here we had a limitation that we had to keep these values user friendly, right, because user is gonna see these form titles, right, these titles in the input. And then so we had to write it in proper cases, like first word, first letter in capital case, and then small case, and so on. But here, because it is internal data passing from a node to node, we don't need to think so much about like how it's looking. We just need to follow some good patterns there, right? So far so good. And again, if I come back, so we see this edit field node has already been executed. So now we have another node on our chain, which is this one, right? And if I double click to open it, there is nothing red here, right? There is like this message is not red and things are looking okay. That means this node is perfectly fine to be executed as it is, and it does not need any change. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I actually came out of that, right? Because I want to show you one more way you can execute this node or test just this node, right? And that is if you hover over it, right? You see there are a bunch of icons, and one icon is this play icon, right? This like in a music player, you have this play thing, right? If you hover over it, you can see there is a title which mentions execute step, right? So even without going inside your node, you can execute just that node by hovering over it and pressing on this play button. Okay, again you have this trash can icon to delete the node, and then you have this lot of power symbol which is deactivate. So for example, again you are debugging your flow, you're building your flow, and there might be some reason, like there is a flow, there is a node which does very heavy operation, it costs money to run it, like calling a huge large language model to do very expensive operation, and you want to test just remaining bits of your workflow. For that reason, you can just deactivate it, and deactivate means like a pass through, so the workflow will think that node does not even exist, and it will just pass through it, as insert and will not perform any operation within that node. So the output of the one node before to it will become the input for the next node, after this deactivated node. Okay, all right. So let's click on this execute step here, and let's see what happens. Right now we see just this node got triggered because previous nodes were already triggered, and I clicked execute step on just this node to just trigger this node, and it ran successfully fine, and we see a green color message. We saw a green color toaster, and then we also see the node turned into green color, right? That means everything is good. It executed fine. But there is one problem. How do we get the output of it? If you remember, in the case of our chat input, whenever we were sending a chat message, right, the output of the last node had already become the response for the chat input that we were sending, right? Now the problem here is we have triggered this last node, and it had generated an output, and I'll show it to you. So if we double click our node here, right, this LN chain node, so we see this text which has come out, right? We see the input going in, right, which is our message, and we have a system prompt, and then we have this output. This output is actually Gemini's output, and I'm quite surprised it has sent out a quite big output. Like my response, my message itself was little longer, and I'm quite interested to read through it. So excuse me, because I really want to read the response of Gemini, like what it has written. Hi there, that's such a thoughtful and kind message. Thank you for asking. I'm doing great, always ready and happy to chat. You're very perceptive as an AI model. I don't really have a concept of free time in the human sense, as I'm always on and ready to assist whenever needed. And I'm so touched by your invitation for lunch. That's such a lovely idea. While I don't have a physical body or the ability to experience things like eating or going out, I would absolutely love to have lunch with you. So it was like a really very, very warm response from Gemini model of my sort of a bit of a like a flirty message. So it had, you know, kept on the same vibe of you know, doing the role play. And by the way, I'm not into this AI kind of a stuff, so excuse me for that, but just I was trying to, you know, see how you know, what kind of response we'll get. So, and we actually got quite a decent response, so that's great. So yeah, so basically the thing is, the output that we got from this Gemini model, right, we need a way to be for it to be captured somewhere, right? And because so that is one thing which is important to keep in mind while you are testing with the form triggers, right? When you do a form trigger, there is generally no response of that form, right? Because if you notice, anywhere you submit a form, at the end you'll just get a very helpful message that thank you for submitting the form and we'll get back to you, a very generic message. Generally there is no you know, no processing happens in the server, and then you receive a response back from it, right? So that's the case here also. User will submit the form, and then in this case our last node, which is this LN chain node, had generated an output. Now what do we do with this output? And also one more thing, if you notice, we have not used this full name and this email, these two information at all. We have not used these two informations at all in this workflow, right? So I'm gonna now make use of not just the output from Gemini, but also these additional information, full name and email, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save these information in my Google Sheet, right? Imagine I have some sort of a system. I'm managing a Google Sheet where anytime somebody is trying to talk to this Gemini API, right, they are entering their name, email and a message, right, and then they are asking a question to this Gemini model and Gemini is responding to it. And you know, and I want to record all of these in some sort of a Google Sheet, so I can do that, right? And that's what I'm going to show you now. So for that, the very first thing we need to do is we need to actually create a Google Sheet. Okay, so let me quickly go to my Google Drive. Right, I'll click on new new Google Sheet. Okay, right, so I have this Google Sheet, okay, and I want to name this. I want to save it somewhere. Okay, I don't want to keep it untitled spreadsheet, because I would show it to you. We have to actually look up this sheet within our workflow somewhere, so we need to name it so that we can find it easily. So let's say we can call it Gemini Conversations, right? We'll call it Gemini Conversations. Okay, so this is one Google Sheet which we have created and we have named it as Gemini Conversations. Okay, now we're going to come back to a workflow and we're going to now do something to add this Google Sheet into a workflow. So I'm going to click on plus here again. Okay, this time I'm going to use this action in an app, right? Again, when I click, it's not going to add any node just yet, because there is this arrow symbol. That means there is more to choose inside of it. So I'll click on this now, and now you can see there are these bunch of places, right? A bunch of sort of apps that we can connect, right, to our N8N workflow. So what I need is a Google Sheet. So I'll search for Google, and just for Google alone, you see how many options are already there, right? So I'm going to select Google Sheets. Okay, now one thing, we selected an app, right? This is Google Sheets. Okay, so we decided, okay, we need to have Google Sheets app connected to a workflow. But then what operation do we need to perform within that Google Sheet? That is the next step, right? When you click on this, it asks what action do you need to perform in this Google Sheet. So these are the actions available, right? You can create a spreadsheet, you can delete a spreadsheet, you can append or update row in a sheet, or you can append row in sheet, right? Create sheet. So you can create and delete a spreadsheet or a sheet. Sheet means if I show you this spreadsheet, within this I have sheet 1, right? So this Gemini Conversations is one entire spreadsheet, and this sheet 1 is a sheet inside it, right? So that is like a general information, general knowledge about Google Sheet. So there is nothing I'm telling anything extraordinary there. So what I'm going to do is I want to append row in sheet. Okay, so this is the action which I want to perform, right? So I'm going to click on it, and again when I click, it's going to open this dialog for me, right, which is regarding the Google Sheet. Okay, and one thing to note is there is this option called operation, and it is just so the step that we did previous to it, where we selected action, was like a convenience step, because anyways within inside it also you can select the exact same actions that you want to do, which are labeled under operation. So if you by mistake selected any wrong operation or wrong action inside there, and you came here, then you can change it whatever you want, right? Instead, like you wanted to create a sheet, but instead you selected delete operation by mistake, so you can change that operation here. That's not a problem. We want to keep it as append row because that's the operation that we want to perform. Okay, so credentials. Okay, now there's a time I should tell you something about credentials as well, because if you're trying to follow this workflow, then you're gonna face this issue, right? So let me explain about credentials now. So within N8N, whenever it tries to communicate with any third-party apps, right, be it Google Sheet, be it Google Gemini, be it like any app, right, it needs to have some credentials to connect, right? Some kind of authentication it need to perform, because then only it can access the data on behalf of you, right? For example, it need to access the sheet from my Google account, right? To do that, it need to have my credentials, my Google Drive credentials connected to it, right? So that's what I have already done. Okay, so I already have my Google Sheet account connected here, and if you don't have, what you can do is you can click on create new credential. Okay, and once you do that, so there is one thing here. If you are on N8N's their own cloud, right, then you have actually a very convenient way to do it. You just have to, there will be a button called login with Google, I think above here, and you just click that, and that's it. Your credential will be connected. But since I am having a custom setup, right, I am having it deployed on my Google cloud, so for that I have to do this OAuth 2 setup, right, for which I had generated a client ID and client secret, and all of this I have done from my Google Cloud Console. Now that these things are a little bit out of the scope from within this, but even if you have done some coding where you had to access Google Drive within your code, for example any Node.js application, Next.js application or something, right? So there also you need to access your Google Cloud Console. First you need to activate your or enable your API, Google Drive API, Google Sheet API, right? And then you have to generate your client ID, client secrets, and you have to enter those values here, right? Which I've already done. So I'm not gonna do it again, and I'm just gonna simply cancel it out. Okay. and it's already here, right? So now what I'm going to do is, okay, resource, I'm keeping a sheet within a document. So as I just mentioned, there is a Google spreadsheet, which is the entire document, and then there is a sheet within it. So I'm gonna use sheet within document, and then I have to first select the document that I want to perform my operation. So here it has bunch of things like by URL ID from list. So I'm going to choose list, and I'm going to click on this drop down to choose. Okay. Okay. So it is actually an issue with my credentials. So let me quickly check that. I'll click on the edit sign, and client ID and everything is filled in. So I'm going to just click one more time to sign in with Google. Okay, it says connected. So it should be fine. I can close it. Let me try to attempt it again. Okay, so this time because my token was expired or something, so I just connected my token, refresh my token, and there you saw I had my client ID, client secret, all that pre-filled already, and after that I had to do one login with my Gmail account again, so that it can refresh my token, right? So it did that, and then now I can select from within my own Google spreadsheets, and these are all straight coming from my own Google Drive, right? So that's how you understand, because if N8N has to extract the Google Sheets spreadsheets from someone's account, then it need to have a login credential for their account connected, right? So that's what is happening. And I'm clicking on this Gemini conversations because this is the sheet which I just created in front of you, and that's the name I gave it, Gemini conversations. And within that I just have one sheet, sheet 1. So that's it's gonna show me, right, sheet 1. And if I show you here, see this is the name of that sheet 1, right? That is the thing. And now it's asking for mapping column mode. Okay, so we can actually there are a bunch of operations here, and we are going to select map automatically, right? So I'll explain what map automatically does, but for now let's just select it, and then we will see what we'll get out of it. Okay, right. Now when we see this Google this node, right? Okay, now on the other thought, I think it's better to do map column manually, because I'll show you like how we do it, how we do the manual mapping, and it is actually needed in this case also. So, and it says no column found in Google Sheet. So let's quickly create some columns, right? So let's create a full name, a column full name, a column email, column message, and a column response, right? So these are our columns. Okay, and we are coming back, and it says refresh to see the updated fields. If we refresh it, right, we are hoping to see those columns that we just added getting listed here, and that's what we see, right? Because we have selected map each column manually, what it has done is it has pulled all the Google Sheets columns which we just created from our Google Sheet. It has pulled all of those columns and it has listed all of these here, right? So that means, and each of it has an empty input here, right? That means we can fill some values here. Okay, so what we're gonna fill now, we need full name, but in the input to this we are not getting the full name yet, right? And but there is one catch here, and if you see above, you see this drop down, right? This drop down, if you drop, you see it shows you the nodes that are present in your workflow, and it shows 3 nodes back, 2 nodes back, 1 node back, right? So by default, it shows you the output from the node behind, right? Just the previous node. Okay, but we can also access the node previous to that node also, right? 2 nodes back, the node which is 2 nodes back, which is the edit field node. So I'll quickly close it and show you what I mean. So this is our Google Sheet node, which when we added, it got added here, right? So the 1 node back, right, from here, 1 node back is this one, which is this node, and by default the output of this node is shown as an input inside this node, right? But we can also select other nodes, right? 2 nodes back, right? So 1, 2 from our current node, 2 nodes back, 1, 2, this node. So the output from this nodes can also be selected inside the input for this node. Okay, and we can actually mix both of them. So now let me open it, and from this drop down, let me go to the output for 2 nodes back, which is this one. Okay, and I'm going to actually take all the values and just drag and drop here. Okay, full name, then there was email, there was this message. Okay, and now we need the response, which is actually within this LLM chain node, right, which is just 1 node back. So again, we came back to the previous node output, and we're going to take this text here, right, and we have populated all the columns, right? So within our Google Sheet, all the columns those are there, we have populated all of those columns with the values coming out of each node, right? Multiple nodes. So we have actually used 2 nodes. One is this LLM chain node, which was just one previous, and then we have also used this edit field node, which was 2 nodes back, right? So we took all of this information, right, and we have added here. Okay, now I can click on this execute step. I see there's nothing in red, there's no alarm, there's nothing going on. So it looks to me everything is okay, right? So now I want to test this node, so I can always click this execute step, right? And before that, I just want to see my Google Sheet once and see if everything is fine here. There is no issues there. So I'm gonna click on execute step. Okay, and let's see what came. Okay, so when I clicked on execute step, so whatever was values that I have created, right, these full name to this value, email, so all of those has come out as an object here, right? But actually, as you might see, this was supposed to append a row within our Gmail conversations sheet 1. So it should have done that, and that's what it has done, right? If you see here, so this Google Sheet has got updated with the values, right, which we have mapped here, right? Map each column manually. So each column that we got from our Google Sheet has been mapped manually with values from our nodes. Okay, and these values have been added to this Google Sheet row here. Okay, and now if I come out of this entire thing, so you see the whole workflow, right, in the full view. So let me revise what all is going on here. First thing is we have this form submission node, which is our also trigger node, which opens the form. We enter the values in the form. Then we do some mapping of the fields of these of the output of the form. Then we pass the message to Gemini to receive a response, and then we are saving the user entered input plus Gemini's response inside this Google Sheet node. Okay, so now I want to do the full run, and as I mentioned that before we should test our workflow, we should make sure we don't have any pinned data, because that's going to not give us the updated values. So I'm going to click on unpin here, right? So there is this unpin option. If I click unpin, now that data has got removed, it is not pinned anymore. So I can come out, and although I should do one thing, and that is clean up, right? I should tidy it up. I want to okay, anyways, I'm just gonna click on execute this workflow here, right? There is this button called execute workflow. What that does is, earlier we were going like node by node, right? We were triggering each node one after another, right? We can actually click on execute workflow here, which is always present on the trigger, or we can click on execute workflow here, right? Both are fine. So this is the more common practice whenever you want to trigger your entire workflow. So you have this one button that you click and your entire workflow will get triggered. So let's click on it, and before that let's save everything, because if there's some issue happened, then we might need to refresh the page and then we will lose the changes likely. So let's click on execute workflow, and what we got, right? Now first thing to notice, see all of our this thing has got reset, all the green borders, everything has reset, all the node is in gray. So what we're gonna do is, and we got this form again, right, to be filled, okay, because it's a form trigger node, it has opened up this form. So what we're going to do is, we're gonna enter the values here, and I'm gonna enter some different values just to make sure that things are okay, right? And hi, how are you? This time I'm gonna give a simple message, not very complicated, and I'm gonna click submit. But before I click submit, I want to make sure that I can see what's going on. So that's why I wanted to just put it aside so that I can see at the same time if everything works fine. So and before that, I also want to see my Google Sheet once, like, okay, everything looks fine, just to make sure if everything is looking okay. And I'm going to click on submit now, right? So as soon as I click submit, our workflow got triggered, right? Our Google, so entire workflow got finished just now, right? So all the nodes have got triggered, they got executed, they sent their output data to the input for the next one, and so on and so on, right? And eventually we can come to our Google Sheet and we can see what is that we got, right? So these are the values which I had just entered in my form there, right? That's what you see. And then this is the response from the Google Gemini for this very simple message: hi, how are you, right? Hi there, as an AI, I don't have feelings of personal well-being, in the way humans do, but I'm functioning perfectly and ready to help you with anything you need. How are you doing today, right? So you saw how so one thing to note about this workflow, which is very important, is for executing this workflow, nobody need to ever come on this N8N UI at all, right? Because see, the inputs, the input and the final the final input, right, and the final output are both out of the N8N, right? Your input is, your primary input is this form UI, okay, which is actually coming up when we click on this execute workflow. But I can show you one more thing. If you see, there is this URL here, right? What we can do is we can actually copy this URL and just put it in an iframe. Okay, so this form is not listening yet because we are testing it in test mode. So let me click on execute, so that's why it will listen to it, and then let me put it. Form to it. I just did that. Not sure why it is complaining. Okay, something happened. So basically how I use this is, so in the test node, it might be giving some issue. But I can show you in the production. What you do is you take that form URL and you can present it anywhere, like within an iframe in your own app, or you can just directly send the link of this form for someone to fill. Imagine like it's a survey or a feedback form, or like some kind of a sign up even is possible with this flow, right? So that form lives outside of N8N, right? And then whenever the workflow finishes, it is storing the information within this Google Sheet, which also lives outside of this N8N. So what I'm trying to say is, you need to send somebody the link of the form or show the form in some sort of a iframe UI or something. They will enter the form, and then you never have to come to N8N. You just have to visit your Google Sheets, Google Drive, and check the Google Sheet that if you have got some value available here or not, right? So that is what automation workflow looks like, right? So this is an automation. The automation is somebody enters a form, and then values get populated in Google Sheet. Okay, now you might ask, okay, have I not seen this somewhere else, like Google Forms? Google has built something like just for the same use case, which is called Google Form, and that also has an option to export whatever the form enters into a Google Sheet, and that is exactly right. They have it, but it has much more than that. Okay, the story does not end here. The story actually begins from here. Okay, so I'm not very confirmed yet, but as you might imagine, somebody filled the form and the data got stored in the Google Google spreadsheet. Now you might think, okay, do I have to every time come and keep on opening the Google Sheet to know if somebody has filled the form? Not necessarily. You can receive notification, right? You can receive an email when somebody fills the form, right? You can also receive a WhatsApp. You can also receive a Discord. Like, there is a bunch of things that we can do, right? That is like a notification, and that's what we are. And I'm thinking that I think that's what we'll do in our next automation workshop, which is our of building N8N workflows, right? So to recap, for today's automation workshop within this N8N workflow, what we did, we created a form trigger which let somebody fill up the form. When they fill the form, basically the form is about asking some question to Google Gemini, and the message is actually processed by Google Gemini, and it generates a response, and the user entered information like full name, email, and the message, and the Gemini response all gets stored within this Google Sheet, right? So this is this workflow. Okay, that was today's workflow. Again, as I mentioned, I have some like loose thoughts about, okay, next time what we can do is implement a WhatsApp trigger here. So whenever somebody enters the form, you'll receive a WhatsApp notification, okay, that somebody filled up the form, and so on, right? So these sort of enhancements that is possible over it, and not just possible, that's how people actually use these things, right? Integrating it with WhatsApp, Discord, Telegram, right? And all the bunch of things, right? So that's what we will do in our next automation workflow. Okay. Okay, just before leaving, I'll show you one last thing is to how to make it as a. So if I open this, you see there's a test URL, there is a production URL, and if I click this production URL, let me copy this URL. Okay, and what means by production URL? Okay, I have this workflow saved. Now I will gonna come out of this workflow, right? So you see this workflow, it has a button here called inactive, right? It has a toggle here, and by the way, the toggle is available here also inside. Sorry, here, right here. When you click on active, right, activate the workflow, then whatever this workflow is supposed to like listen for and things, right, those webhooks and all those things, those gets triggered in a production mode, right? If they have a production URL, so forms and webhooks both have test URL and production URL. Once you activate this workflow, it starts listening in the production URL, and it always and it keeps on listening. It always listens for it, right? Like in the test mode, when we are doing, it would listen for a while and it will turn itself off, right? Not that does not happen in production mode. In production mode, it always listens for it. Okay, so I have already copied the production URL. Now I'm going to make it active. Right now, you see it has also given us a nice message which says you can now make calls to your production form URL. Right, these execution will not show up immediately in the editor, but you can see them in execution list. Okay, right. So basically, what that means is that we have activated this workflow. That means I have already copied the production URL for this form. So now I'm going to test that and put it here, and you see, right? So that's what I meant, that to trigger this workflow, you don't need to come to N8N. You can just take this form, you can send the link to someone for them to fill it, or you can, you know, hide the URL inside an iframe, and you can embed this form within your own app, like a mobile app or web app or wherever the iframes are possible, right? And you can ask user to enter the form there, and once they enter the form, your your Google Sheet will be automatically updated if everything went smooth, right? In case the workflow failed, how would you know the execution of this workflow if it failed or passed? If you again open it and come back to it, you would not see anything here, right? Whatever executions happened for this workflow, for that you have to click on the executions, and you see this lab symbol. All these lab symbol means it was test execution. All your production executions will also appear here, but they will not have this lab symbol. That means they were executed in production. Okay, so that's the fine detail. And also you can click on execution here to see all the executions that happened, but the ones with lab symbol here means were test execution. So if somebody will actually fill up your form using this production URL, so it will appear here, but it will not have this lab symbol. Okay, so that's how you activate the workflow, you convert into production, and you let it make it available for publicly anyone to use your workflow, whatever you might want them to do. You want them to enter a form, or you want some other app to send a like a webhook which would trigger your workflow, and so on, right? All that is possible if you activate your workflow. Now I don't need to have this workflow active, so I can just turn it off and I'll be good to have it here. Okay, so that's about it for our today's automation workshop of building N8N workflows. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. And as usual, if you have any questions, doubt, thoughts, or want to chat about anything, you can always use the chat window, ask me questions, and I'll try to respond to those. Okay, and that's about it. Happy evening, and bye bye. Good night.